When I say US torture chamber in Latin America, what is it that comes to mind? I'm guessing Guantanamo Bay, or Gitmo as it's called. But now Gitmo will have to make room, because the US might be getting a second black site soon in nearby El Salvador. El Salvador is a Central American nation home to about 6 million people, but a lot of them are in prison. El Salvador has the highest incarceration rate in the world, with more than 100,000 people behind bars, thanks to their president, Nayib Bukele. Bukele became president in 2019 and he has transformed the country. Murders and other violent crimes have plummeted during his reign because he locked up tens of thousands of people. But despite this, his prisons still have room to spare. So he has offered this space to the United States. Bukele says he will take in American criminals for a very reasonable price. Here's our report.
Donald Trump's new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is on a Latin America tour. Rubio was in the small nation of El Salvador yesterday, meeting with their president, Nayib Bukele. Rubio shared hugs, met Bukele's family, took a stroll by a lake. We know all this because Bukele kept posting on social media, with US and Salvadoran flags and the caption, "Friends." It seems that in that spirit of friendship, Bukele offered the US a deal.
We are finalizing it, and I believe the Secretary will announce it. We are announcing a much more important agreement on the same subject, with a much greater scope than those made in 2019. In this case, it is something that the Secretary will say if we finish closing it. It is a much greater agreement that is unprecedented in the history of relations, not only between the United States and El Salvador, but in Latin America.
It seems the deal was finalized because Rubio did announce it, and he was stunned at Bukele's generosity.
President, in an act of extraordinary friendship to our country, knowing the challenges we face in the U.S., has agreed to the most unprecedented and extraordinary migratory agreement anywhere in the world. He has agreed to accept for deportation any illegal alien in the United States who is a criminal from any nationality, be they MS-13 or Tren de Aragua, and house them in his jails. And he's also offered to do the same for dangerous criminals currently in custody and serving their sentences in the United States, even if they're U.S. citizens or legal residents.
So El Salvador has agreed to become a deportation hub, where the US can dump undocumented migrants. No matter what country they came from, El Salvador will take them all. This includes hardened criminals. And not just criminal immigrants, this includes US citizens. El Salvador says it'll become an offshore prison colony for all of them. Why would El Salvador make this offer? For the money, of course. Bukele put up this post, saying that he would charge a competitive fee, cheap by US standards, but a windfall for his government. The US has almost 2 million incarcerated people. If Washington takes up Bukele's offer, if it sends even a fraction of its prisoners to El Salvador, Bukele could make quite a killing. El Salvador has the space to house tens of thousands of prisoners. Bukele recently built a mega prison in the country called the Center for the Confinement of Terrorism. It can officially house 40,000 prisoners. But the prison director once said that where you can fit 10 people, you can fit 20. So, who really knows the prison's true capacity? There are no family visits allowed. No human rights groups, no NGOs. Just rare guided tours at best. Bukele built this prison to house dangerous criminals, gang members that had been terrorizing El Salvador for decades. The country used to be a murder hotspot. But Bukele imposed an emergency and proceeded to lock up anyone even remotely related to gangs. The result has been that crime has fallen dramatically. But there are reports of arbitrary arrests, custodial torture, and extrajudicial killings. The prison is considered a dumping ground for people who will never see the light of day again. Bukele is incredibly popular in El Salvador. After all, he drastically reduced gang crime. A lot of Salvadorans feel much safer, so many are willing to overlook state excesses. Will it be the same for the US? Will El Salvador's prison become the new Guantanamo Bay? The US holds Guantanamo Bay in Cuba because of a 120-year-old treaty, which allows them to control it indefinitely for about $4,000 a year in rent. The US used Gitmo to torture terror suspects. But in the case of El Salvador, they won't even have to get their hands dirty. It might be more expensive than Gitmo, but the ability to outsource the torture might make Washington happy.
We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we've put together for you. Touted as the minimum defense from that video. India's neighbors were the first to send this special edition of Vantage live from the White House throughout this week. Yes, Hindu Mandir in we're on our way to Tel Aviv. Measure, but it's also the perfect way to drive.
I don't think that
Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sherin Tagwe. Welcome to
60% of the world's
office. Prime Minister Modi did the iron.
we were actually
How are you doing? How do you like? It's been 1 year since that meeting. Iron bars separate you from the outside. Out the vote efforts. Trump had, it says, and at $4.3 trillion, 300 billion by 2030. That's what we need to tackle climate change.